I have a couple of questions. One is really short and maybe better for later, but you said the universe was flat. And it's my impression that the universe is, that space-time is curved. Do those things necessarily conflict or no?
No.
Okay.
But it's a good question. No, I can explain very quickly the difference. Space is flat. Space-time is curved. On average. Yeah? You can blame Mr. Einstein, Professor Einstein for that, yes. That's right.
I'm a geologist. I work at a research lab in Tokyo. I study earthquakes, plate tectonics, and the like. I've published papers. I've reviewed papers. I participate on blogs quite a lot. My question is sort of directed at something that was mentioned earlier about the review process, the peer review process, the relationships between scientists and between the different sciences, which you touched on regarding climatology versus weather, right? Which is also true inside geology. If you talk about the paleobiologists and you talk about the structural geologists, well, there's these arguments because sometimes their data doesn't match, or sometimes the hypotheses they derive don't fit each other. And related to that is this whole thing about peer review, and it always has this sort of halo over it. But I've reviewed papers, and I've had my papers reviewed, and I've reviewed proposals, and I've had my proposals reviewed. Scientists are humans, and we have the same petty angers and jealousies and competitions that everyone else does. And I wonder if you guys think about the possibility or potential for something like the Public Library of Science, coupled with something like the blogosphere or something like science blogs, to begin to augment or perhaps replace or perhaps become an evolutionary development of the peer review process.
I think that it's complicated. That's a very good question. One of the dirty little truths is that depending on the field, if you're in a field like mine, I have also reviewed papers, and I have friends and enemies who reviewed papers. The fact that a paper has passed the refereeing process gives me absolutely no confidence that it's right compared to my own confidence just by looking at it. And it's kind of a bother to have to do all this stuff. So I think that two things are simultaneously true. One is that the fact that a paper has appeared in a referee journal and been accepted by peer review makes no difference whatsoever to my personal judgment of whether it's right or wrong. You can't believe everything you read. You have to keep your eyes open. On the other hand, I think that the process and the institution of peer review is still critically important for the overall functioning of science. You're not always an expert in the area of the papers that you're trying to read. And the fact that there is that filtering process and the fact that there is some check and balance on it, even though it's imperfect, I think is not something that should or will go away.
I guess I'd just add, it's like democracy, it's like science, right? It's the worst system except for all of the other ones that you can think of. And it's important to remember there are definitely problems with peer review. And every time you interview scientists, they're always saying, this paper, they always have some complaint about peer review of a recent paper that should have gone through and didn't. And I've heard it so many, it's just sort of the norm. But, scientific knowledge is partly generated by peer reviewing, but it's actually bigger than that, right? It's after peer review, and you actually win consensus based upon the whole literature. And so that's what the National Academies does, pulls together all the scientists, look at all the peer-reviewed studies. And then it's both of those things in interaction, and I don't think science would be nearly as able to give us, how certain we are in something without the consensus building that comes after peer review. So that's also really important. Yeah.
And creationists, of course, would say that the fact that scientists sometimes disagree means that science doesn't know anything and God must be true. So, stands to reason.
Clear review.
Just one other comment. PLOS does have a new journal called PLOS 1 that is trying to incorporate all of that. So how successful it will be remains up in the air. We just have about 5 more minutes, so just a few more questions.
Okay. First, I'd like to thank everyone for covering so much material so quickly in a clear format and entertaining as well. I graduated from college with a physics degree some 30 years ago, and I've tried to keep track of some of the things that have happened since then. but I never really understood why anybody thought there was dark matter or dark energy, and I want to say, Sean, that you've elucidated that for me. But I do have a question for you, and that is, now that I know that, what do I do?
Protest.
Make the check out to, sometimes you do things just because you're curious. I think that the great thing about science is that the motivation behind the people doing it, either professional scientists pushing back the frontiers of knowledge or interested amateurs just trying to keep up with what's going on, is that they're curious. They want to know the answer. And as a benefit, you make the world an enormously better place, like you invent the computer and stuff like that. So the reason why you do it is not the tangible benefit you get, but you get both. So I think that what you do is you read the next book. You read about biology, or you read about extra dimensions, or you read about the Human Genome Project. There's more out there that we can possibly master, so it's a good situation to be in.
Thank you.
I think this is going to have to be it if you can be quick.
What was that?
I think this is going to be the last one if you can be quick.
Oh, sorry. This question is for Ed Brayton. And let me first start out with my embarrassment that I am a current student of Washington Lee University, which is the same school of which we can claim Pat Robertson, a proud graduate. And
We forgive you.
sorry. I went to a private high school where we were taught things such as like the sinfulness of birth control and the like. And as a student, what do you think is the best method for us to oppose teaching things like that and intelligent design and the like?
We get calls, Michigan Citizens for Science, the group that I'm on the board of, we get calls sometimes from students, as do other groups that deal with this around the country, or from their parents when they bring home, around the country there are a lot of teachers who are teaching creationism, and nobody's going to find out about it until somebody complains. And so, the big thing I think is just stand up, be heard, because there's lots of people who are willing to step in and help you get that out of there. National Center for Science Education is the principal national organization, that deals with creationism and intelligent design. But there's lots of groups. I mean, if it's a problem with what's going on, what's being taught in a sex education course, the ACLU has a whole project for that. So there's lots of groups out there. If you can stand up and make your voice heard, there are a lot of groups that will come in and help you out and try to get it out of there. So.
I think that's going to wrap up the session. Thank you all again for your attendance, for your questions. Again, please remember Chris Mooney will be signing books downstairs at 4:15, and if you have any more questions, you could probably reach the rest of us outside. We'll hang around for a few minutes or something. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. That was awesome.
Really good. You guys are so good. My gosh, I'm glad I did this with you guys. It's so hilarious.
The Three Stooges of David.